Welcome back to the Ghost Bunny Podcast. I'm your host, Bridget Marcourt, with a brand new episode for you guys today. My guest today is Lisa Praxel. Lisa Praxel has been a tour guide and living history member for the Sacramento History Museum for over 15 years. As a tour guide, she takes guests into the historic underground space of Sacramento, telling a first-person narrated story of how and why Sacramento has an underground. In the evening, she takes adults on a tour where she portrays a saloon owner, and the tours focus on the murder and mayhem that happened in Sacramento in the 1850s to 1870s. She has been a fan of paranormal tours in towns all over the world while she travels. About 3 years ago, she proposed that the museum add a paranormal tour. It was approved, and now they take guests into 3 historic buildings, teaching them how to hunt for ghosts, as well as telling them the history of the space. This year, they are expanding their tours to include the historic cemetery on Broadway. I'm super excited to hear all about this because this is a place that I used to go all the time when I was younger, and I still go back to every time I go home. I love Old Sacramento, and I can't wait to learn more about it with you guys. Lisa, thank you so much for doing the podcast today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I was just saying when I was reading your bio that Old Sacramento is very special to me because I grew up in Lodi, which I'm sure you know is a town just outside of, not too far outside of Sacramento, maybe like 40 minutes to get there. And it was someplace that we used to go on special occasions or like super excited to go there to the Railroad Museum and just walking around and enjoying it and everything. And one of my favorite stores of all time is there. And I still, every time I go home, I'm always like, oh, we should go to Old Sac. And just like, I don't even know what I want to do there, but I just want to like be there. Like there's something about it that I feel really nostalgic about when I'm there. And I can picture it being back in the old times, and like, I just really, really love it. But one thing, I mean, obviously I know Sacramento history somewhat, and I know that, Gold Rush and those kinds of things, but I don't really fully feel like I know the history of Old Sacramento, and I definitely don't think a lot of the listeners probably do. So if you could maybe start off by telling us a little bit of the history of Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, I born and raised in Sacramento. I've always, like you, Old Sacramento is like the place you take visitors and, you go hang out down there. It's like the special night. And as an adult, I started working down there and realized all these things that I never knew. Like, I never knew that Old Sacramento is actually the second floor of Sacramento. It's all been lifted. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah, and that is so cool to me, and I definitely want to know more about that.
Right. It's so, I mean, we always think, oh, the gold rush and all of that, but there's so much history in Sacramento itself. In like the lifting was the 1860s and not the 1850s. So even though we got our start during the gold rush, there was so much turmoil for 10 years that the city just kind of went, let's do this different, and lifted it up. So yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours. How far back do you want me to go?
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm just curious. So Sacramento was founded during the Gold Rush era, correct?
Kind of. So it was originally founded as New Helvetia with John Sutter in 1839. And, there's controversy there as well.
Well, I just laugh because one of the things that we had to do in school in I think it was the 4th grade was go to Sutter's Fort.
Yes. Yeah.
We had to build a mission and do the whole thing. So if you guys don't know, John Sutter was one of the founding fathers of that area, and he had his own fort there. And it's still kind of well, it's more of a museum, but it's still an active. At least the last time I was there, they were still making candles. You would do candle making, and everything is still reenacted the way it used to be.
It's definitely a historic site. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's where Sacramento started. John Sutter believed that he was going to make what he called New Helvetia, New Switzerland, and he received free land, 50,000 acres of free land from Mexico. And then he sent Marshall up, this is so 4th grade history, but he sent Marshall up to go get wood, basically, to build his town. Gold was discovered, and it all just changed Sacramento from there. John Sutter lost his property. He ended up dying, kind of poor. James Marshall, the guy who discovered gold, ended up poor. California was taken over away from Mexico during the Mexican-American War. Just, I mean, there's so much. I don't want to go back too far. But yeah, Sacramento has been in turmoil basically 1840s all the way to 1860 when they finally went, you know what, we're a city, we're well established, we need to have rules, we need to have laws, and we need to have safety for their citizens. And that's when Sacramento really changed.
Well, I think a lot of these towns, like I just did a podcast on McCallum Hill and everything too, and there's such violence during the
Yes.
gold rush era. I mean, it was very competitive. I mean, you can only imagine how competitive it must have been. And people are there risking their whole lives and giving up their entire lives on this like hope to find gold.
Right.
And it's you're competing with everybody else that's trying to do the same thing. And it's really for your life you're fighting for that because you gave up everything.
And
And it was
most of the people who got rich during the gold rush were not the miners that found gold. The people who got rich were the people who, what we called, mined the miners. They were the entrepreneurs. They were the people like Levi Strauss who found a niche and sold things to the miners. And that's what we find in Sacramento as well. I don't know of any famous names of people who found gold and made it rich. I mean, I could probably go back in my memory archive and find somebody, but Sam Brannan, he didn't find gold. He mined the miners. Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah. So that's the turmoil that you find in Sacramento City. What I focus on a lot of my tours is like the murder and the mayhem and the prostitution. I love that part.
Yeah, no, I do too. So basically, Sacramento existed there, but wasn't it rebuilt, not only because of the turmoil that was going on and like reestablishing it as a city, but also because it was flooding quite a bit. It's like right on the river, right? I mean, right there.
Yeah, it's actually where two rivers meet. So it's where the Sacramento and the American River meet, and it just kept flooding. And between 1850, there was a flood in 1850, 1852, actually 1852 and 1853. So within 3 years, there were 4 major floods. And then the big flood, which, the biggest one in history of California, was in 1861 into 1862. It was about 45 days of just constant rain, and it was a warm rain, so it melted the snow in the Sierras, and all that water just settled into the valley of Sacramento, like the whole valley. There was a lake that went from Sacramento, actually Yuba City, to Bakersfield. Yeah.
Oh my God. Just to give people an idea of what that looks like, that is almost not quite, but almost to LA.
Yes.
Like Bakersfield is like just an hour and a half maybe outside of LA. So that would be like the entire Central Valley, which is probably, we're talking 400 miles
Yes.
between that span. That's how big that lake would have had to be.
350 miles long and 40 miles wide.
Yes. Oh my God. I had no idea.
Yes. Biggest, strongest flood ever in record of California. Destroyed farmland, destroyed cattle. Fresh water was actually in San Francisco Bay. So much water was going out of the bay. And here in Sacramento, we had a little levee, about a 5-foot levee, that a guy by the name of Bigelow had made. And that levee withstood the flood, but at the same time was only 5 feet high. And so the water just flowed right over the top of it.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
When it finally did break, it broke upstream and not downstream. And so all the water stayed in the city. And Sacramento was sitting in stagnant water for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It was horrible. So can you imagine the mold, the mildew, the stories that we have of people living on their second floor and dealing with the mucky water underneath.
Well, and not to mention too, it's got also probably dead animals and all kinds of nasty things in there. Possibly even people, because where did they all go?
So they went to high ground. In fact, the Sacramento City Cemetery is up on high ground. There's a place called Poverty Ridge that is up on high ground. So they were living during the height of it outside of the city. But then once the floodwater receded, so this flood was in January, by March, they were moving back into town. and dealing with, like you said, the muck and the dead animals and getting all of that out of town. They had to blow up the levee downstream to get the water to finally go out by March. And that's when, at that point, 1 in 5 buildings in Sacramento had been destroyed, either from the water itself or from a wood building sitting in that water for so long. That's when they said, all right, we have to do something important. So the flood was 1862. By 1865, we've rebuilt our city. Great. But now what? So then the big political fight of how do we save the city in the future? And they did what they called a 3-pronged approach, where they moved the river. So the big C turns in the American River, they were actually straightened out so they couldn't break the levee on those C turns. And they lifted up the city. And then they also built bigger levees. So between those 3 things, that's how they protected the city. And that's what we do, is we take people down into the underground to see the original level of the city.
So cool. And I did not even know that existed until, I want to say, a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago. My mom, who still lives in Lodi, called me and she's like, I was watching the news and they were talking about doing ghost tours under Sacramento in the tunnels. And I was like, the what? Wait, what? I need to, I read about this. I need to do this. Who's doing it? And then she gave me some name, and we reached out a while back ago, not to you, but to whatever name was on the news or whatever, and it didn't happen, obviously. And then I got busy and was doing other things, and I kind of switched the podcast for a little bit, and then I would just had Elsie on, and I was like, what I'm really dying to do, and she was telling me about how she's going to do Gold Country Paracon in Old Sacramento in 2026, and she was asking, and I was saying, if you know anybody that knows the underground or whatever, and then she sent me your contact. Wow. So this has been a long time in the making. I'm so excited to talk about all this stuff, but I literally have gone there hundreds of times and had no idea.
Right. You're not alone. There's so many people that, like myself, born and raised in Sacramento, have no idea why it looks the way it does. Yeah.
And you know what's interesting too, and maybe you can tell me how this works. I do know that a lot of the businesses in Old Sacramento you go down. Mm-hmm. Are those in the underground then?
So yes. I mean, it sounds like, ooh, spooky, they're in the underground. But what it really is think about, in the last 160 years, they've more like a basement, right? So yes, anytime you're in a building in Old Sac and they tell you to go downstairs, you're going down to the original level of the city. And people just think, we have basements in Old Sacramento, but no, that's the underground. Each building, Old Sacramento is an amazing situation, for starters. So it's a city place that has a state park within it. So the State Railroad Museum, all the way to the theater, the Eagle Theater, that's all state parks. And then there's a city streets, and then each building is individually owned. They're privately owned. And then those buildings are leased to businesses. So talk about a political nightmare when we want to do something in Old Sac. But it's just also amazing because we get all of those people involved in everything we do. So when you go into a business and they tell you to go downstairs, you're going to the original level, but it has been, renovated and changed in the last 160 years to just be a basement.
Yes.
And some of them have, so the first thing that was done in 1865 is the streets were raised, and every building owner had to pay to build a brick wall out in front of their building. Can you imagine nowadays if the government said you have to pay to build this brick wall? But they did it because they were all on board, and then the brick walls are, on both sides of the street, and then the city fills in the street with solid brick, raising it to its new height. So those brick walls are underground, and you can see them when you go down in the basement. The Round Table Pizza has their booths in between the buttresses of this original brick wall from 1865.
When I said I've been in the downtown Round table pizzas were underground. Round table pizza is exactly what I was thinking.
Yes. And people don't know what they're looking at. It's so just once you point it out, you'll see it everywhere. The parking lots. If you go into a sunken parking lot, the original 1865 bricks are right there and you're parking next to them. And it's, yeah.
Wow, yeah, I did not know all of that. Graveyard Tales podcast, hosted by Adam and Matt, takes a look at the history behind haunted places, ghost encounters, and cryptid encounters. They take a look at odd phenomenon like spontaneous human combustion and out-of-body experiences and take deep dives into remote viewing, alien abductions, Ed and Lorraine Warren, and the Salem witch trials. They approach all episodes with a great blend of extensive research, lightheartedness, and humor. Some of their most popular episodes include Missing 411, the Travis Walton abduction, Multiverse Theory, the Fae, cattle mutilations, shadow people, the Las Vegas UFO sighting, and Chernobyl strangeness. Go to graveyardpodcast.com for more. So there's a whole city underneath the city, or the old city under there, and just to give people an idea of what Old Sacramento is like, because honestly, I know it's a tourist attraction, but I'm honestly surprised it's not more of a tourist attraction because it's very, very cool. It's like a historic old city, but with like new fun businesses in there. Like we said, Round Table Pizza, but they have like all the fun touristy things too, like, or at least they used to, old-fashioned picture taking and like, I was saying my favorite store is there, Evangeline's. Like,
Evangeline's,
if
love.
I don't go to Evangeline's at least once a year around Halloween time, then I missed something in my life that year. Like, I have to go. Hey everyone, I just wanted to say that this was recorded on June 3rd prior to a devastating fire that broke out at Evangeline's Costume Mansion on June 17th, 2025. As we talk about in this episode, Evangeline's is a multi-level costume store, and according to the news reports, the fire was on the first floor, and the sprinkler system did its job and put the fire out before the historic building was lost. But unfortunately, because of the fire, the smoke, and the damage sustained, Evangeline's is temporarily closed and will not be reopened for the Halloween season. It is a loss to the family, the community, and the people like me that love that store and think of it as a staple every time I visit Old Sac, and especially during the Halloween season. It has been my favorite store in the area for as long as I can remember, and I hope the family, who has owned the store for over 50 years, are able to recover from the tragedy. And talk about haunted. I know they don't like, they are haunted.
So so many people again love Evangeline's, but next time you're there, go to the third floor. You see the original bar up on the third floor, the original stained glass. When you look up, it is an original building. It's amazing. And then next to Evangeline's took over one of the oldest buildings in Sacramento, which is the little building on the corner called the Lady Adams. And that was the only building to survive the Great Fire of 1852. So that's one of the oldest buildings in Sacramento. And underneath that building, in the basement, is actually the original mast of the ship that the building was shipped over to Sacramento in. It's amazing. Yeah. So I've never seen it. We've always wanted to go in it. The people who work there, have said if we want to come in, we can. So we just need to, like you said, things get, you don't always catch up with the people you want to catch up to. But yeah, Evangeline's is an amazing, what they have inside is amazing, but what they have underneath is also really amazing.
Yeah, just the architecture of that building is so, so cool. Like you were saying, they have the original bar and stained glass windows upstairs, and right now they use it. It's like a for those that don't know, it's a costume store and also a gift store. There's like a lot of like cute gifty things on the first floor, but the second and third floors are like all costumes and all costumes accessories, and they do such a good job in displaying things, because if you want to be, say, like Dorothy for the Wizard of Oz and you go to the Dorothy section, there's going to be every single thing you could possibly need and want and more, and things you never thought of to make the costume so perfect. Every detail, and they'll have like 3 or 4 different versions of it too. It's incredible. But I also want to explain too, just about Old Sacramento. It has the cobblestone roads. It butts right up to the river where they have the Delta King on there, which is also haunted. I want to talk to you about, which is an old like what do they call them?
Paddle wheel. Mm-hmm.
Paddle wheel boat, and it's a hotel you can stay on, or you can just go there for dinner. Does it actually disembark and go anywhere?
No, it actually doesn't have an engine.
Oh, okay. So it's just parked.
It's just parked, yeah.
And then they have like the old steam like is it a steam engine or just an old locomotive that takes you on like a scenic route?
Oh no, it is historic locomotive. Yeah, they bring out different engines at different times. Yeah, that's an amazing trip up the river.
And it just kind of goes up and back. And I know they do like spooky ones at Halloween time, and then they also do a Christmas one,
The
like
Polar Express.
Yeah. And then they have the giant railroad museum in there, which also haunted. I don't care what they say. I know it's haunted in there. Like, I can feel it. There's this one car, and I don't even know what it's called or anything, but it's one of the passenger cars, and it has like all the dishes set up the way they used to have it. And I definitely feel something in that car. I wish they'd let us investigate all these places.
Yeah, that's state park zone, and they're not as welcoming to the ghost aspect of history.
I know. They're missing out. They're missing out. But I just wanted to give kind of people a perspective on what it's like there. And when I say there's all new stuff there now too, it's like you can go see there's comedy clubs, there's restaurants, and like we said, Evangeline's and Round Table, and there's a big Embassy Suites hotel right there on the edge of it. And so there's lots of
There's
modern
now
things.
a putt golf.
Oh,
down in the basement of one of the buildings, and each hole is a time in history. So you go through the gold rush and you go through like on the wagon train. They've done a really cute job doing putt golf in Old Sacramento.
It sounds like it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk about ghosts. You said something that's interesting in when you sent me like the places that you take people and everything. And you said each space that we investigate has its own unique personality and experience. And I think that's such an interesting and cool way to think about different locations that are haunted. I've never quite thought about it I mean, I know what you mean when you say that, and immediately I'm like, no, it's true, they do. But like, I just thought maybe talk about that a little bit more, how you can really get a sense of a different personality in a building.
Sure. Let me tell you like how I got involved in this ghost hunting. So I work for the Sacramento History Museum, and we too are in Old Sacramento, kind of. If you go to the Railroad Museum and then go straight towards the river, we're this little tiny amazing museum. And we started out doing the underground tours. And I love to travel. And when I travel, I seek out ghost tours, right? That's kind of the thing. I go in every single town. And in all of my tours, I'm like, why are we not doing this in Sacramento? So I, went to my bosses at the museum and said, hey, what if we did this? And they ran with it. And so they got the whole thing started. And so we now have 5 different venues that we go into and investigate. So we take guests. If you book our tour, we take guests into these historic sites, and we teach you how to use the equipment. We let you what I call a sterile investigation. So go investigate without any history, see what you get. Then we come back and we tell them the history. And it's always fun at that point because the people are like, oh my gosh, I got that on the SLS, or, oh, I got that, that word on the spirit box. So they're making connections. And then with the history, they go out again and investigate, being able to call out the history of that building. And so we're out of the Sacramento History Museum, which is a recreation of an original building called the City Waterworks building. And that building was the sheriff's office and the county jail, and it did hangings. People were hung on that very spot. And then the artifacts that we have in the museum, I think, have an energy to them as well. So that's one of the spaces that we do. And, like I said, it is a recreation, but it's on the exact spot. I think there's a lot of energy that comes from the river itself. We're close to the river there.
Yes, that's one of the questions I was going to ask you about earlier, because Sacramento doesn't just have those 2 rivers. Like, there's a lot of rivers in Sacramento County. There's I think 5 of them that that all are around there?
Well, our museum sits where the two meet, so Sacramento and American, and where they used to meet, actually, like historically. But then they moved the American River about 3 miles, excuse me, about 1 mile north of where we're at. So,
Okay.
yeah. So that's one of the buildings we do. And then we also do the Hastings Building, BF Hastings. It's an original building built in 1853. It's been the county courthouse. It's currently the visitor center, but it has an underground space as well. And we take people into that original underground. There's a couple deep pits that were used for excavation of artifacts and go all the way down 5 feet. And those just, again, I think are fun and carry some interesting energy. But again, there's artifacts down there, and we tell how the city was lifted down there. And we have true stories of things that happened on that spot. And we often try to get those fun things. So, yeah, so the Hastings building is really fun. That one, too, we start upstairs. Well, it's like the main floor, it's not really upstairs. And so
Yeah.
we take people in the main floor and then we take them down underneath it. So you get to see kind of both floors of that historic building. And that's the oldest building we go into. Then the third building, which is my favorite, it's called the Hall Lures building, and it was built in 1885. But it was built on top of the remnants of brothels. And we know the names, and we have a lot of history of some of the women that worked there. There was a doctor in one of the boarding houses there, and he was kind of a crook. I mean, he never went to medical school, but he practiced medicine. And so we get to tell all their amazing stories, and we get a lot of interesting evidence in that building.
Yes, I bet.
Yeah, so that's my favorite. Then the ones that we don't do as often, we do the Eagle Theater. And we haven't gotten a lot in the Eagle Theater. It's a very small venue. We haven't got a lot of evidence, but every now and then. And then we do the City Cemetery, which is what we're ramping up for now. In fact, I'm got my research right here
Wow,
that I'm
yeah.
doing. And we're going to go investigate the City Cemetery in June and July. So if you want to come join us, we'd love to have you. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me about, how your interest got started in the paranormal.
Just that. I mean, I love to travel and I love history. And I
So
have
there
found that when I go to a new town, I can get some of the best historic stories from the ghost tours. So that's what I do. When I go to a town, I take a ghost tour.
there wasn't like a childhood experience or anything like that?
Nothing. Yeah. I mean, my sister is sensitive and she claims that my mother is sensitive. I don't think I am. I just like it. I like the idea that this energy is left behind. I am a skeptic. I will debunk things as soon as they happen, and if I can't debunk them, then I'm all excited that maybe I caught something. So that's kind of where I don't know, where I have fun in it and
Yeah.
experiencing it. Nothing scares me. I'm the person that will walk into a dark room and not be afraid of anything in there. I don't think anything is out to hurt me. I've never had any kind of negative experiences. So
Yeah. When people go on the tours, what kind of gadgets do you give them to play with?
So we have a lot of things. So we have dowsing rods, which they can use hands on. We have a lot of EMF readers that are hands on. But then we have what we call a stagnant device, which is our REM pod. Please don't touch it, kind of thing, but interact with it. We have a laser grid, and then we have a spirit box, and then we have a couple apps on our phone that we recommend. We have SLS on our phone. If you want to download the app to the SLS, totally free. And then we have Spirit Box on our app that you can use on your phone. We also have a thermal camera that we use, and that one I've had fun with. Most of the devices that people can use hands on are the EMF readers. We've got a ton of those. You can take those and use on your own. And then the dowsing rods you can use on your own. And then you're welcome to enjoy as a group our laser grids, our EMF, and our thermal camera. So
Yeah.
we're working on getting an Estes method working on some of our tours. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, does everybody know what Estes is?
I think everybody knows what Estes is, but just in case you don't, it's where you wear goggles and like a or some sort of blindfold. Doesn't have to be goggles, but like a blindfold, and you wear headphones that are like noise canceling, but you are hearing just like the spirit box coming through, and somebody else is in the other room asking questions, and you have to just you don't know what the questions they're asking are. You just have to say whatever you hear, and it's kind of like sensory deprivation. You know what I'm saying? And and you just like say what you hear. And I'm terrible at it. Like I feel like I just don't hear things very well. Like I'm like, I don't know if I heard, I don't know. Did he say that? Even when the spirit box is going and everybody's listening, they're like, oh, they said this and they said that. And I'm like, well, I didn't hear it.
Yes. And that's kind of why we like to do some of the Estes stuff is when you have a crowd listening to a spirit box, they feed into each other and they will say, oh, I heard that. And somebody else will go, oh, yeah, I heard that. With the Estes method, you can't hear what the question is. And so
Right.
if you can, interpret, it is hard to hear on the spirit box what's coming through. I like to have, like I've used before, more sterile investigations where people don't know what the question is. They don't know what the history is, and they're not bringing their own preconceived ideas into an investigation. I think that's just more fun.
Yeah. No, I actually see it both ways, and I'm always torn. Like, is it better to go in knowing the history and knowing like what's going on and being able to talk directly to what you think is there, who you think is there, or is it better to know nothing and then see what you get and then line it up with the I'm torn. I feel like both are good methods and both have their positives to it. And it's one of the reasons that I like to go and investigate with other people because I like seeing what different methods they use or how they do it and their rituals involved with it and everything. I like learning from everybody else.
I enjoy what other people bring. And we've had multiple times on our tours where the spirit box is coming up with a name. And it means nothing to us. It means nothing to the history. But then I turn around and the woman behind me is crying because that's her husband's name and he died a month ago.
Oh my
And so
god.
somehow the energy comes with the people that are doing the tours. And when you
Oh, yeah.
come into the space, it might not be a historic ghost from the 1800s. It might be something that you brought with you. And we've had
Right.
that happen more than once.
Yes. And that's true too with a location. I've been if you go to the same location over and over again, but you bring different groups with you each time, it'll be picking up it could be totally different each time. It could be more negative one time, and I don't mean negative in like a demonic way or anything like that, just a little bit more negative of somebody. And then sometimes it can be totally positive or it changes with whose
It
energy you bring into the room.
absolutely. I mean, I've been doing these tours for 3 years and we do, the same buildings. And each night it's different. You never know what's going to come through. You never know how much energy is going to be there. A lot of times it's just nothing. And we're like, I'm sorry. I wish we could make them come out when
Yeah.
everybody's here, but you just have to see what people are open to.
Definitely. So tell me the types of things that people are experiencing in these buildings.
So, in the City Waterworks building, which is our museum, we have a young girl there. We think it's May Woolsey. May Woolsey is an exhibit in the museum, and May was 13 when she died of encephalitis. And her mom put all of her things into a trunk, and we have that trunk with all of her things from her childhood. And we have caught giggling, we have caught footsteps. We have a family that comes on our tours. They come on all of them. They've been there multiple times. And the young boy, probably 15, 16 years old, he's gotten touched when sitting in front of May Woolsey's trunk. So that's really fun. And our REM pod goes off there all the time. We don't know why. We have no reason, but something's there. And then in the lobby, multiple times we have had the SLS come out, and it shows someone 4 feet off the ground when that's where the hangings were.
Ah.
Yeah, I actually have a video recording of the SLS. So yeah.
And what about in the other buildings?
So in the Hall Lores building, we have the doctor. The doctor has come through, and that is more, I don't want to say negative, but people have felt like anger, that they're sad or angry in the space where the doctor is. But I've never felt endangered or anything from him. His name is Dr. Crane. And we have, again, an SLS. There's a rocking chair in the space, the hauler space. And we have had a small figure. We don't know if it's a child or a small woman, but a small figure show up in that SLS multiple times. We actually had somebody sitting in the rocking chair and they said they felt like tingly all over. And then it showed up on the SLS that there was something sitting on her lap. So that's amazing experience there. In that case, in that space as well, we had a spirit box say, bring her. And we're like, what are you talking about? What do you want to, who do you want us to bring? And it gave a name. And somebody on the tour was like, that's my friend. She's over there. And so she went running over and grabbed her and said, you have to come, and brought her to where we were doing our spirit box. And the woman's like, what is going on? And the spirit box said, thank you. We don't know why the spirit box wanted this person, but asked to bring her, and we did. And it said, thank you. So little things that we enjoy the interaction, but we have no rhyme or reason. We have nothing that we can say, oh, this is Dr. Crane. We have not been able to, claim definitive connections between the interactions and the people that live there. And then in the other space that we do, the Hastings Building, not a lot, just orbs, a lot of orbs. In fact, I have a photograph of an orb from the Hastings Building. We do have a full body apparition of a family it was taken with a high spectrum camera, but that's in the hollow sidewalk of the Hastings Building. We have no idea who they are or why they would be there. It's a tall woman. Standing next to her is a little boy with a bow tie. The bow tie is very obvious. And some people say that they can see a smaller child next to the boy with the bow tie. But that picture is pretty amazing. It's also one of those, if you're a skeptic, you're like, yeah, I think it's the glare of the light. But I can pretty definitely see three figures in the photograph.
Wow, that's interesting. I'd love to see that photo.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share them with you. I actually emailed them to you.
Oh, you did?
But
Okay, good.
I also sent you from our thermal camera. There was a woman that had something manifest in front of her, and she's got her hand out like, you can touch me. And you can see in the thermal camera that something is touching her side because she's hot, but there's a blue streak like on her hip where something is touching her. She kind of freaked out. She didn't like that.
So that's interesting because I was going to ask you about that too. Using the thermal camera, do you find that if there is an apparition or something that comes through cold, or do you think it comes through warm, or are you looking for any kind of anomaly?
In my experience, they come through cold. The 3 or 4 that I have definitely had something come through, they've come through cold. There are things that happen that, like, we will find a heat area that we can't explain. But again, I'm a skeptic, so I try to, that's the heater, or somebody was leaning against the wall. Our personal heat signatures, if you're touching something, they last for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
A good 2 minutes, we will get a human heat signature. So if I see something on that, I have to kind of say, was anybody touching the wall? Was anybody leaning against this? And a lot of times I can find, oh yeah, somebody was leaning there. That's why it's hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. What about, have you ever experienced anything just like walking around Old Sac, like seen somebody like maybe period wise or whatever, and you're like, wait, we don't have any reenactors here or something like that?
I have not. I actually think that Old Sacramento is not as haunted as people want it to be.
Aw.
My own personal theory on that is that Sacramento in the 1800s was just crazy and fun, and the men that were there were free. They had moved away from the strict rules of the East Coast, and they're in Sacramento with this freedom. So I think that people were just really happy in Sacramento. That's my own personal feeling. I don't know if that's true so much, but there are rumors, there are stories about many, many buildings. But again, I'm not sensitive, so I don't feel it as much as other people do. I know when in the spaces I'm familiar with, I know when we walk in whether or not we're going to have a good night or not. And I don't consider that sensitive. I don't know,
Well,
but
there's something to that,
there's
though.
gotta be something to it, and maybe it's just an energy that I carry and bring that, you know, with who I'm investigating with. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But there are buildings, many buildings in Sacramento with lots of stories, as far as the hauntings, like the Delta King. Um, we've heard stories of a little girl in the Delta King. The story of the Delta King that I've heard is that there was a little girl who went missing on a trip with her parents on the Delta King. And when
Okay.
they got to Sacramento, they couldn't find the little girl. And when they, everybody left the ship, disembarked, no problem, all of this, and they started investigating. It was hours later when they found her body in the boiler room. And by then, everybody had gone. So there's no way to catch the criminal. We can't find any newspaper articles at all confirming that story. So we don't know how true the story is and how much it's been rumored. We cannot find any historic newspaper articles about any deaths on the Delta King. So some of the hauntings that I've heard of there, we have yet to confirm with historic evidence.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We really focus on the historic evidence of a building and not, oh, it's haunted kind of thing.
Yeah.
Supposedly the captain of the Delta King is there. They see him in the pilot house. I have nothing to confirm that as well. Yeah, we haven't been able to contract with them to go do our investigations there.
Darn.
I know.
I know that would be so incredible. Like, oh, I for sure wanna go do that.
Yeah, we
It's
were
like
working on adding the schoolhouse to our tour,
mm,
and it was too poorly, falling apart, and so they've just removed it. The schoolhouse is no
oh,
longer in Old Sac. Yeah,
oh, that's a bummer.
so new things to
There's
come, though.
Yeah, there's always something so spooky about an old schoolhouse. Not necessarily haunted, but they just when you walk in, like, I don't know, you just feel it in there that it's just they've got a certain vibe to them.
Yeah. The riverfront, I think, is definitely has some energy to it. The number of boat explosions that we have, historic boat explosions, within a mile of Sacramento, the Pearl and the Washoe both exploded, killed, many, many people. And the stories of, these burned people being removed from the river and taken to various buildings. Our museum is one of them. It was used as a morgue and a stationary hospital for when the Washoe exploded, and they brought the people to our museum, and then from there off to either the morgue or the hospital, depending on how horribly you were burned from the explosion. And then we have the whole of the ship, what a piece of metal from the ship on display. And so I think sometimes we get energy from that.
I had no idea that even happened.
Oh, yes. There's so many. The Pearl and the Washoe were the ones that were really close to Sacramento. Historically, what would happen is the captain would be racing another ship. And so they would push the boiler to the point of explosion, and it would cause the ship to basically fall apart and toss men, women, and children who at that time didn't know how to swim into the
Mm.
river. So that one, lots of energy there on the riverfront.
Yeah, it would be amazing if you guys could add the Delta King to the list, but and what about and I know we can't do the Railroad Museum because it's national park and they don't wanna play, but what about Evangeline's? Would that ever be on the
Yes,
radar?
that is actually on our radar. It is in negotiations. The problem is they are a very important business. You know of them. Everybody knows of Evangeline's. We love Evangeline's. I personally would be very nervous taking a tour into their amazing business with people I don't know. So it would have to be very controlled, very small number. I'm afraid of because they have such neat things in Evangeline's. There's just a five-figure discount that people think they are, entitled to, and I
Yeah,
would
and
very much worry about that.
there's so much stuff in there, it would
Yes,
be hard to monitor that, it would be really
really
hard,
hard.
which is
Yes,
unfortunate because it would be such an incredible spot to investigate.
it would be. Mhm.
But yeah, maybe if it could be a small enough group where it was not just random,
Yes.
not just tickets sold or whatever.
Exactly. It would be people we know, total under control, and yes. But the other thing with the riverfront, I didn't tell you, there was a boat on the river called the LaGrange, and it was a prison ship. And they actually tied it to a tree and had it float out to the middle of the river. And they would keep prisoners there in the 1850s until 1853, when there was a flood, or 52, when the boat sank and the part of the boat is supposedly still under the bridge there. So the LaGrange prison ship has some amazing stories just of people on the ship itself. My character that I play, the prostitute, she did time on the LaGrange prison ship. There was a marriage on the LaGrange prison ship. Some guy in full shackles tried to escape, jumped into the river, immediately went down to the bottom of the river, and they found his body like days later. Just, yeah, the prison ship is just a fascinating story in and of itself.
Yeah, I did not know about that
I
either
know.
at all. Tell us about the character you play and
Oh,
and how the tours go down.
yes. So we have lots of tours, but the tour that I'm referring to with my character is an after hours tour. It's for adults only. And we take, again, into the underground spaces, but we talk about murder, mayhem, prostitution, gambling, kind of the darker side of Sacramento in the 1850s. And I play a madam. Her name was Fanny Seymour, and she owned the Palace Saloon, which was on 3rd Street, right by I and J. And she was just a character. She carried a revolver in one pocket, or one side of her belt, and a Bowie knife in the other. And so I have that as part of my costume. And she was known to play Pharaoh all night long, gambling $1,000 a hand. She came from Ohio and then Virginia. So when I play her, I talk like a Southerner because I'm from Virginia, and just kind of have fun with that. She eventually left Sacramento because she shot a guy. She shot a man who she believed was stealing from her. And she was put in jail for attempted murder. She escaped by smart talking a young gentleman to get her off the ship. And he rowed out to the ship and got her off the ship. And so she had to leave town, and she ended up down in New Orleans running guns for the Confederate Army dressed like a man. And she ended up opening another saloon down there and becoming very wealthy until the end of her life. So Fanny Seymour's just, I think she was just a character, you know.
Yeah,
And
and what an interesting story. Tell us about one of the craziest, like, murder stories that you know of.
yes. So this is actually, I sent you the SLS on this one. So his name was George Simons, and he was eventually hung in the city cemetery. And I tell this story on my tour. And more than one time, as I'm telling this story, we get this SLS that shows up why I tell the story. So George Simon was living in Auburn, and he disappeared about the same time as a stagecoach robbery. So there's like, oh, we should find him and see if he knows anything about this. So the sheriff from Auburn, actually the Wells Fargo agent, follows Simons through Sacramento and south towards Stockton. He finds Simons about a mile north of Stockton with 4 horses and some stuff that has the name of Russell on it. And it's like, who is this Russell guy? You must have stole his stuff. We're going to take you to Stockton on a suspicion of robbery. Well, while he's in Stockton, the body of Russell is discovered near where Simons was camped, where they originally found it. So now he's on trial for murder, which means he's brought to Sacramento, being the state capital, and put on trial for murder. And the whole time he says, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. It's not me. All the way to through 3 different trials and retrials and all of that. Finally, 1863, he's walked to the lobby of our building, 3 stories up, where they built a platform. And his last words are, I hope that my wife finds her way to the righteous path. And then he's hung. So 2 weeks later, his wife marries the Wells Fargo agent that arrested him. And they have a heated affair. And a couple years later, she has an affair with another man. The Wells Fargo agent is horribly jealous, finds her, shoots the man she's with, shoots himself. And so this murder, love story triangle just is so convoluted. It's amazing. And so we kind of question, was Simon's innocent? Was he set up for the whole thing by this agent?
Right.
And that's why he's still there. We don't know. We only have the facts that, he claimed his innocence to the end, and then his wife married the Wells Fargo agent.
And I wonder if he knew his wife was possibly in on it.
Right.
And that's why he said that.
It's amazing. I mean, just so many, there's more than one story like that. There's another guy by the name of Mortimer who murdered prostitutes. And when he finally was put in jail, we think it was his brother, but a man came and tried to break him out of jail, and brother was shot. And from that point on, Mortimer either pretended or was crazy. And he had a lock of his brother's hair that he would hold on to and he would talk to. And he would just act crazy, basically. And he was in jail at our building as well. And the officers that dealt with him, they did the same thing. Are you crazy, or are you acting like, give it up? You're going to be hung. You don't need to keep acting crazy. And he continued to act crazy till his death. And after his death, the agents believed that his spirit, the Mortimer spirit, was in the building, in the jail cells. And this would have been the original building in the 1860s before we rebuilt it. And so that's kind of the first, spirit that we hear about in the 1800s. So, yeah.
Do you ever feel that presence in there?
No, not that I'm aware of, but the SLS that we get, that's the hanging that I sent you a photo of. Maybe it's Mortimer, maybe it's Simon's. We don't know, but yeah, it's just the stories and the unknown is what I like about ghost hunting and the spirit world and all of that. Even though I'm not sensitive, I just love the possibility of it and what could be out there that we just don't know about.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you a couple of things that are not in Old Sacramento, but are in Sacramento.
I'll see if I know them.
Yeah, tell me. Dorothy Puente's home.
Oh, yes. I have never been there. Well, I've never been inside. I've been outside of it. I've been in front of it. You can't go in it anymore. I love the story. And so I can't speak to the energy that might be in there, but I lived it. I was here in Sacramento when all of that was happening and watching the news and seeing it unfold. And like one day it was this and the next day it's 3 more. And you're like, oh my gosh, this woman. Yeah.
Yeah. For those listening that might not know, Dorothy Puente lived, she had a house in Sacramento, and she would take in, she would board people. I think most of them had mental handicaps.
Or elderly.
Mm-hmm. Or elderly. And she was this little tiny old lady, and she was murdering all these people and stealing their Social Security checks or disability checks or whatever was coming in. And these people didn't have like a lot of family that were checking on them or anything. And so it went undiscovered for a long time. And I don't know how she was doing this. She's a little tiny old lady, and she was burying the bodies in the backyard. And I don't even know how they finally discovered it, but do you remember?
I think a family member came to look for their loved one was how it finally came to the end. But yeah, she's modern day scary Sacramento history.
Yeah, and they just kept digging up more and more and more remains. And I don't even remember what the total count was, but it was a lot.
Yeah, I actually think it was only like 4, but more than 1 is not okay, right?
Well, okay, you're right. But for some reason, I thought it was like way more than that. I thought it was double digits. I thought it was like 12 or something.
I'd have to get more information. Yeah.
Maybe 4. 4, 12, whatever. But still, the whole thing was crazy because if you saw this woman, you would never in a million years, never think anything.
She looks like this sweet old lady that, plays canasta. That's what you would think, right?
Totally. It's crazy. What about Preston Castle? Have you been over there?
I have not had the benefit of doing that. Again, I've been there, I've been to it, I've never been in it, I've never investigated it. I actually live in Elk Grove, so I'm really close to Lodi and
Mm.
really close to Preston Castle. They have such a short window of when they're open and when you can actually go in and investigate. And I'm old, so I don't do midnight to 3 a.m. investigations. And they're really good at doing some amazing all night investigations. And I'm just
Well,
not up for that
know,
anymore.
one of the reasons they have a short window to do it is, and I know people are gonna laugh at me because it's California, and I know California only gets so cold, but
Oh,
I have been inside that building before they were doing investigations, not before they were doing investigations ever, but before, like, the window was, like, the president of the Preston Castle Association gave me a tour, and it was like, I don't know, maybe I don't remember what month it was exactly, maybe April or something like that. It was so cold in there, in that building. I don't know why it was so cold, but it was, like, ridiculously cold. I was so freezing that I could barely feel my fingers.
yeah.
By the time we were done, like, I was shaking.
It's a brick building. And so it's cold when it's cold. And it's a brick, like a think brick oven, right? So right now it's 95 here in Sacramento. It's got to be over 100 in there in a big brick building.
Yeah,
So,
and there's 0 air conditioning or heating or there's barely lighting. So, like, it needs a lot of renovation. So, a lot of places don't even have the floors. Like, you can look down 3
yes.
stories and it just drops down. So it needs a lot of, but it's a really cool place. But I think that's why they have a short window. Plus they work on all volunteers, so
Yes.
they,
Yeah. And it
meet
was a
people.
boys' home. Amazing stories there and not good treatment of the boys that were there.
Yeah. Have you been to the governor's mansion?
Again, not in it, but I've been around it. That's one of the places I love to just go and stand in front of. I'm one of those creepy people. But I think that's an amazing building in itself. Again, a beautiful, I think 1890 that building was a late 1800s that building was built. It's absolutely gorgeous and it has these turrets and little rooms that you can tell are at the top of the tower, and I've heard a lot of stories about that being haunted, but again I have not had the opportunity to go in and do any investigating in there. But beautiful building.
So I used to work for the Living History Center, where we did the Renaissance Fair and also or I should say they did, not we. I worked for them and did the fairs. But we also were doing the Dickens Fair, and they brought the Dickens Fair to Sacramento one year, and I was working it, and as like a pre-party type thing, and I think it was mostly for like government officials or like city council members, that kind of thing. They had like a party at the governor's mansion, a Dickens style fair, and they had us come. And it was sort of like a thank you for having us to your city type, like event. And so I got to go kind of like, I got to go work that first of all. So I was inside the governor's mansion, but I also got to go like a little bit behind the scenes and stuff. And I wasn't investigating or anything like that. And this was way before there were even tools to do all that kind of thing.
Right.
But it was so cool being in there, and I remember thinking, "Oh, this place is definitely haunted. It's got that vibe in here, and I feel it."
Well, next time you're in town, check out the governor's or not the Stanford Mansion.
Okay.
And so it's fairly new. I mean, it's probably been 5 years now, but they've just redone, Governor Stanford's mansion. It's beautiful. They mostly have it open for events, like you were saying, but every now and then you can find a tour that's available. And again, this beautiful 1800s building that from the, history of the Stanfords. Stanford has such a history in Sacramento, and this was their home available to go and see. Who knows what's in there? Do you know the history of the kind of the mystery of Stanford?
No?
So, the wife, right, Stanford, we have their carriage in our museum. And so we talk about her. So she had a son, the Leland Jr., and the son died tragically in a drowning. And then she kind of put all of her energy into Stanford University. And the board members of Stanford University did not like that a woman was part of the board back in the 1800s. But she was a very strong and powerful woman, and she felt that they were kind of trying to push her out. And then she was in town one day and took a sip of water, some water bottle. I don't know, we think plastic water bottles, but it would have been actual. And she immediately spit it out and said, something is wrong with this water. I don't know what it is. And being a powerful woman, she had a chemist test it, and there was cyanide in her water. So she runs away to Hawaii. She takes only one known person with her, and that's her maid. And she's in Hawaii, and the same thing happens. There's cyanide in her water, and she dies. And for years, it was thought that maybe she committed suicide with the cyanide in the water. And it was not until well into the 1900s when they investigated more about her death. And it was finally said that, she died, Mrs. Stanford died, was murdered. And so there's amazing, stories behind her as well.
I did not know any of that, and then if only one person went with her, it had to be her maid.
Well, that's what there is, but the maid was never held accountable because the maid kind of reinforced the story of her being suicide. So she was never held accountable, and nobody is able to say it was definitely her maid who tried to kill her. Yeah, and
I can't remember if it's cyanide or arsenic, but one of them supposedly tastes like
licorice.
almond.
Yeah.
Wait, one of them's probably licorice then, but one of them is like a almondy flavor, I think they said like bad almonds. Like, I'm not sure what a bad almond tastes like. I know what almond flavor, like amaretto-y
Yeah.
flavors taste like. So watch out for those flavors. Licorice
Really? Yeah.
or almonds. Your water
we have the Stanford carriage. It's a beautiful black carriage with velvet interior. And we talk about the ball, the Stanford governor's ball. And we tell the story of Mrs. Stanford possibly being murdered.
That is so
Yeah.
interesting.
History changes. And that's one of the things I've been doing this with the museum for 15 years. And in the 15 years that I've been there, I can think of at least 5 stories that we've had to change, because as we do research, it's like, oh, that's not true. That if this happened, then this couldn't be true. And so we have to change our narrative to match how history changes.
Isn't that so cool though, to discover something that actually changes the course of a whole story? Especially something like that, from a suicide to a murder.
Right.
That's very important. And so to uncover that, I feel like wherever she is right now, she's so grateful that people have figured it out,
Yeah. Yeah. But again, that's also why I love this ghost hunting, because it's the unknown. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, I had one more location. Let's see if you know anything about it. The Citizen Hotel.
I don't know anything about the Citizen Hotel.
So I did not either, and my cousin was getting married there, so I looked it up and I found ghost stories on it. And I was like, "No way. I have to stay here one time." I wasn't able to go to my cousin's wedding. And so but I was so bummed because not only did I miss the wedding, but a paranormal
opportunity. Yeah.
All right. Well, I see we are at time. I just have a couple roundup questions for you if you don't. Where would you say is the scariest paranormal place you've ever been? It doesn't have to be Sacramento at all. It could be anywhere.
New Orleans in general was probably some of the scariest. But the one that I actually, again, I don't think I'm sensitive, but this one really got to me. And it was a house that we just randomly toured off of what they call Hook by Crook in Ireland. So I know. And it was kind of just opening, and there were only 3 of us in the tour. It was weird. I felt like I was standing on electricity through almost the entire tour. And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, that happens. People say that all the time." But yeah, that's probably one of the weirdest places I've been to.
Yeah.
Yeah. New Orleans. Savannah was amazing. We went on a couple buildings in Savannah. So
New Orleans just has a whole vibe when you're there. The second you get there, that French Quarter, the second you're in there, you just feel it. It's different.
Some of the buildings are happy feelings, and some of the buildings are these more mournful feelings. I don't ever like to say anything's negative, but it's just a different feeling. New Orleans was amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite paranormal tool?
REM pod.
Best evidence you've ever captured?
Probably the SLS of the hanging in the museum, just because it matched the story. I was telling the story, this SLS came up, and it goes on for a good minute of this thing on the SLS.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. Do you carry anything for protection?
When I'm investigating, I wear crystal.
What kind of crystal?
Black tourmaline.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Paranormal place that you haven't been yet but are dying to go to?
Waverly Sanatorium.
It's number one on my list too. I gotta just do it. I should get a group together because it's so number one on so many people's lists.
Absolutely. Would love it.
Yeah. Me too. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories. Tell everyone how they can book a tour, go see your museum.
Absolutely.
If
And
you want
you,
all
Bridget,
your
if you're ever in town, send me an email. I will get you into our tours. But again, it's Sacramento History Museum at sacramentohistorymuseum.org. And all of the tours are available. And we'd love to have you guys anytime.
Yes. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of I can't even talk. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Ghost Bunny podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on my spooky adventures, and I look forward to sharing a new ghost story with you each week. Please subscribe to my podcast so you're always the first to know when a new episode is out, and follow me on social media at Ghost Bunny Podcast on Instagram and at Ghost Bunny Podcast on YouTube, and that will give you the video version of the podcast. And you can also go to my Patreon at patreon.com/ghostbunny for spooky tours, investigations, and so much more content. I'm working on that. And maybe I'll be in Old Sac.
Yes, we'd love. Well, you'll be there for the Paracon.
Yes. Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Are you doing the Paracon?
I don't know at what extent we'll be doing the Paracon. I've talked to Elsie. I met her at their last pizza and ghost hunting event and told her to contact us. I'd love to work with them and get them into some venues that we do. So I don't know. It's a year away. We'll see what we can work together on. Yeah.
Yes, and I'll be there. It's going to be in May. I think it's the beginning of May in 2026.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be a fun time. Old Sacramento. Can't wait.
All right.
Thank you so much.